The Yankees are, well, in complete disarray at this point, in one of the worst stretches of baseball we have seen from the team in really the past decade. This is a time where it feels like everything's off the rails, and we could be on the verge and on the cusp of a managerial change. Well, at least that's what everybody on WFAN or all over Yankees Twitter is saying. Is it what Justin and I are saying? Well, you're going to hear us say a lot over the course of today's episode. Dylan Price, Justin Chevrolet coming at you with Bomber Boys. I'm going to try to be excited, try to be energetic, but what the fuck is going on in Yankee land right now? And that might be my favorite intro I've ever done.
Wow. I was not expecting that right off the top, but I mean, those are the words that kind of fly around in your head as you watch the Yankee games, and those words kind of come off when you talk about the team even more. It's just that type of time right now for the New York Yankees. It's been a struggle all over the place, and I mean, it's not good. And I mean, we'll get into it, but this is brutal baseball. This is a team that made so many moves a week ago and now has lost four straight, and not in good fashion either. These are four straight losses that are disgusting. There's someone who keeps track of Yankee Way losses on Twitter. These are the Yankees Way losses, blowing last night's game, that game on Friday against Miami that you and I didn't get to watch. And I think that was a really good thing that we didn't get to watch that game. But yeah, this just isn't a good stretch. Fun little intro there. And I think it encapsulates exactly what our thoughts are about this team. You could probably end the show right now.
I'm fresh off the gym. Tried to think I could burn off some steam before we went live today. Didn't help at all. If anything, it actually fired me up more and livened me up. Typically, I would say, "Hey, how are you?" You and I were together this past weekend. It was a great weekend. Good
Great
time
time.
to see you. Get some time away from Yankee baseball, although we were still talking about it, still following it, and still consuming it in a abnormal consumption rate for a team that we talk a lot of crap about the Rockies on this show, and not actually. I think both of us don't have any hard feelings towards the Rockies. In fact, they gave us two of their players, one of them panning out a little bit better than the other right now. And as it kind of stands, though, holistically, the Rockies aren't a team that is the ire of Justin and I. But this season, they are the worst team far and away in Major League Baseball. In their last 46 games, they're 18-28. In the Yankees' last 46 games, the Yankees are 18-28. They go out at the deadline. You heard us with the trade deadline live show talk about some of the moves they made. They made a flurry of moves at the deadline, which we'll talk about in short order here. Doesn't seem like it's made much of a difference. This is a team that just completely lacks everything right now. Nobody seems to have their head on straight. Hell, the only person calling anything out right now is Ben Rice, and he got sat on the pine yesterday because of it. Obviously, that might not be the real reason. It might have to do something with who was toeing the rubber for the opposing team. But the reality is that Ben Rice, one of the youngest guys on this team, is the only one calling out the Yankees' lack of having their head on straight right now, their lack of accountability, their lack of urgency for the fact that they are 18-28 in their last 46. It's funny when, we start off every show with, hi, how are you? What's going on? We try to keep things relatively upbeat. But it was one thing, when we ripped on them through the June swoon. Another thing when we said, hey, it trickles into July. But then they had some momentum going into the All-Star break to an extent. They kind of tanked that last series going into it. But they had some semblance of momentum. And then coming out of the break, then the deadline, and then now this last stretch here against Miami, the first time in franchise history that they got swept by the Fish. This is amongst the worst stretches, and I truly mean that when I said it off the top. We've watched some bad baseball in our lifetime as Yankees fans. Hell, there was a season where our Yankee favorite, Lyle Overbay, might have been one of the most productive players on the team. But the reality is that season was a hell of a lot more fun than whatever the Yankees are putting out right now because it's uninspired baseball. It's hard to watch baseball, and it's the saddest part about it is it's a lot of guys you want to root for. It's a lot of guys who are fan favorites or were fan favorites at other places that just something is lacking right now. And this is not a Yankees team that I think is bad at baseball. I think this is a Yankees team that is full of talent on the roster. So to me, that spells something that else needs to change, something that might be at the top. And right now, that feels like the only answer because when everybody's struggling, when there's a lack of accountability, when it feels like guys just are lacking fundamental baseball skills that you're taught in Little League, and not hustling, not knowing where they are on the bases, not knowing what out it is, that just shows a complete lack of accountability. So, I mean, we'll fire it off just with simply your thoughts on this last stretch outside of what you started off the top, just kind of from when we left on Thursday to now, the Marlins series and then the start of the Texas series. What have been your thoughts? Is there anything that you're relatively optimistic about right now?
Well, I think first off, I think not enough people are giving credit to the Miami Marlins and what they've been able to do as of late. Yankees, you should still not have gotten swept by the Miami Marlins, but let's not act like this Miami Marlins team is a bottom of the barrel type team here. This is a really good team, a really young and upcoming team, a team that was kind of in the middle of what they were going to do at the trade deadline, and we heard the Yankees potentially going and getting one of their big starters, but Miami kept what they had. And sure enough, the Marlins come out of the break. They get that big sweep and they keep themselves in a decent looking spot in the wild card in the NL. So I want to get that off the top. I want to go back to the point you made about those bad seasons, the 2012s, the 2013s, the 2014s, that stretch of Yankee baseball. And you think for the reason that was still fun, yes, it was motivated baseball in a sense because a lot of those guys were playing for their careers. They weren't just playing because they're good and can get paid. They were playing to keep their baseball careers going. And that was groups that overperformed year in and year out as much as, the records would indicate otherwise. If you remember the players like Steven Drew and Eduardo Nunez and Yangervis Solarte and Lyle Overbay. And I mean, I could just keep, throwing guys out there. Clay Rapata and Preston Claiborne, who's the assistant pitching coach right now. Those guys were pitching for the Yankees. And at the end of the day, yeah, you didn't do great, but they were guys that were fun to watch. They were playing with heart. They were motivated to keep their own careers going, and it led to some fun moments. I feel like the Yankees have lacked fun moments this year. The last couple of, even that Friday game, which was a disaster when all of your trade deadline acquisitions really made a mistake in that game, especially the bullpen ones. You had the opportunity to still make it a signature moment of the season. Go hit something big in the top of the 10th inning, or top of the ninth, rather, sorry, and close it down and win it. But instead you blow it. And then even last night, same type of deal here. Talking about a team that came back in Texas, but you still had the big chance to go up and do something big in the top of the 10th inning. But the Yankees once again failed to bring the runner around, and they lose on the 3-run home run, which is a different story about Jake Bird's struggles. But I mean, you ran into two hot teams. That could be the only positive to look at this, I think, is Miami's been hot and Texas has been hot. And the Yankees are ice cold, and they've been ice cold now for a while. And I think where that brings my conversation is, if you're ice cold for this long, are you really a good baseball team? Baseball's a long season. So you're going to have your ebbs and you're going to have your flows. And I mean, right now, we keep saying right now, right? I think almost every show we could say right now the Yankees are struggling. Right now, Austin Wells or Anthony Volpe is struggling, right? But you go through and you try to look at the last time the Yankees weren't struggling, right? And the Yankees weren't struggling about, you know, early in the season, but the Yankees are struggling at this point since May. And May goes by, and all of June goes by, and all of July goes down, and now we're into August, and there's new guys on the team, and you're still struggling. And the point of this is, it comes down to the fact that this just might not be a good baseball team. I think they've got plenty of talent, but you need every man on the 26-man roster to be working together, and I feel like the Yankees haven't been. I feel like there's been a lot of, individual play. I can point to guys who are good still and who have been hot. Jason Dominguez has been hitting well. Cody Bellinger has been hitting well. Paul Goldschmidt had a great performance last night. Ben Rice has been, starting to percolate at the plate. And Giancarlo has been Giancarlo, right? You can point to these guys, but then you put it together as a team. And you put together the fact that they're not in the lineup every day, and the fact that maybe Aaron Boone now has too many toys to play with and he doesn't know what to do with them. And you take these guys out of rhythm and they're a little hot and they're a little cold. And it just feels to me that this isn't a team. This is 26 men competing differently. And unfortunately, when that happens in baseball, you're not going to have success. Tell me the last time the Yankees had, a game where it wasn't, on the shoulders of one individual, and instead they continued to pass the torch. That's fundamental baseball. Yeah, I get it. Bronx Bombers, they hit a lot of home runs, and that's been the mantra of the team. And you even see it with Anthony Volpe. Go hit for power instead of trying to hit for contact. As much as I think you and I disagree with that, that's been the Yankee way. But at some point, you got to string things together. And 1 through 9 in the lineup, and the starter and the 3 relievers out of the bullpen all have to be on the same page. And the Yankees don't have that. And like you said, and I bring it back to how you worded to me, it it's got to be something bigger, something more up top. And you can go through so many different departments up top, but it's sure enough, this team really isn't performing as a team. And over their last 49 games, they're 21-28. They have 49 games left prior to tonight's game against Texas. If they were to continue at that exact pace, 21-28, they're finishing the season 81-81. Let that sink in. This is not a 500 baseball team when you look at the stars, the former MVPs, Judge, Stanton, Bellinger, Goldschmidt. This is not a team that's a 500 baseball team. But for whatever reason, they can't get on the same page. So they're maybe even less than a 500 baseball team, especially since May, where they've been under 500 for an extended period of time.
Couple things to quantify the failure of the Yankees as of late. Since July 1st, we've talked about the relievers, and originally the kind of guy who just kind of timed up with the table correctly was Fernando Cruz. So that was the stat we gave almost a month ago now at this point. Since then, since July 1st, it's a 6.13 ERA for the Yankees bullpen, 29th in Major League Baseball. The reinforcements haven't exactly done anything to help that right now. The starters, 5.62 ERA, 27th in Major League Baseball since July 1st. Since July 1st. On the road, the Yankees are 5-18 in their last 23 road games with 142 runs allowed. And when you talk about something that just shows how a team plays cohesively, this is a couple Katie Sharp stats I'm throwing at you here. This was one that was crazy to me. The Yankees have 28 regular season walk-off losses in games of 10-plus innings since 2020. We've been seeing them in some of these lengthier games, some of these grind-out games as of late, and they just can't get it done. They just can't get it done. And when you take all those stats I just gave you, which are in multi-facets, you've got pitching, you've got, just lack of performance on the road, you've got lack of clutchness. But then you take some of the mind-blowing lack of accountability errors from the other day. You've got, Austin Wells not knowing what out it is, Jazz Chisholm doing whatever the hell Jazz thought he was doing on an infield fly. You've got the errors. This is a Yankees team that is averaging just over half an error a game this season. That's in the bottom 8 teams in all of Major League Baseball with multiple Gold Glovers on this squad. This is a team that something isn't clicking, whether it's lack of clutchness, whether it's pitching, whether it's defense, whether it's base running. It is little things that have compartmentalized and become the big thing of this season, the story at this point of this season. You can throw out everything they did in April and May. That's gone because now you're talking about a Yankees team that's just a half a game that they're clinging on to in the wild card race. This is a Yankees team that, as you just said perfectly, if they continue this pace, they're barely a 500 ball club. And this is a team that is a hell of a lot more productive, a hell of a lot more deep, and a hell of a lot more talented than the 82-80 team 2 years ago.
They still have the best run differential in the American League. This is what we're like. It's almost like the sky is falling, and this team puts up so many runs consistently. But it's like you said, it's the little stuff. It's compounding.
92 run differential as of yesterday, plus 92 run differential going into last night's game. There was another stat here for weighted runs. They ranked since July 1st with about 114 plus, I think it was, which puts them 4th in all of Major League Baseball. They're not void of an offense right now. They're void of consistent pitching. And then in these tight games, they just lack a sense of direction, a sense of passion, a sense of fire. We came on the other day hyping up Ryan McMahon and this walk-off that they had, and it felt like the tides had finally turned. Like this was the team from April and May again, but it hasn't been. So with all of what I just said, there's a reason it was kind of a multifaceted statistical breakdown, and then talking about some of the things that you can just see on the field, the things that have gone viral on Yankees Twitter. And so I'm going to play into Yankees Twitter here because there's so much to panic about right now that I don't think there's one thing to boil this down to. You mentioned privately Devin Williams is something to talk about. That's a big issue. One of the guys you got at the deadline being sent to AAA, that's a big issue. The bats and the base running, still an issue. Errors, an issue. Is Judge going to be okay? An issue. But the biggest thing of all is whatever the hell's going on, yelling at one guy in the tunnel, one guy on the bench the other day. It just feels like there's a lack of accountability, there's a lack of direction, and there's a lack of leadership. So that's why I give you this. It's a vote of confidence panic meter. This isn't a pinstripe panic meter. The sky is falling because it feels like everything's falling right now. This is a complete shift of what the panic meter is supposed to be. 1 to 10, what is your confidence level in Aaron Boone's leadership right now? Are you voting no confidence in Aaron Boone?
I can't vote 0 confidence, and I guess we're a 1 through 10 on the panic meter. I think is how we've normally played this. So I guess 1 would be the lowest, and I can't go there. Because I mean, at the end of the day, he brought this team to the World Series last year. Did he lose it by putting Nestor Cortez in instead of Tim Hill? I believe he did, but he did bring this team to the World Series. Now, my confidence, I'd have to put it a 4, 3.8, somewhere around there. It's not high. I can tell you it's certainly not high. And this is why, because this goes beyond just Aaron Boone's leadership, right? Because it rubs off. You look at Luis Rojas and how many outs he's accounted for as the third base coach. Travis Chapman the other day got reamed out. I'm not sure if that was really his fault. It seemed like he was yelling at Jazz, and Jazz just didn't get back, but he got yelled at. Matt Blake is Aaron Boone's pitching coach, and Matt Blake can't find any luck right now in any of the relievers he threw out there. He got a new one, and that guy's already optioned to AAA. So this goes well beyond just Aaron Boone's leadership, but he's the guy at the start, right? So when you look at that, it's like you got to maybe make a change. At the end of it, I am confident in saying this team is not a World Series team. And that's crazy because last week I came on here after the trade deadline and said this is a team that's going to win the American League East and compete. But it's been enough in those 4 games to already realize that was all just an illusion, right? Brian Cashman brings all this talent in, but talent can only go so far. Ability can only go so far when there's no accountability. And I think that's the big point with this New York Yankees team. It all starts up top. Why is Jazz still out there the following day after he runs into that blunder at first base? Why is Austin Wells was replaced following his base running error, but it was because it was a day game after a night game. Would he actually been replaced for Ben Rice? Who knows, right? You know, you saw Jorbit Vivas back in Atlanta go not slide into third base, and all Aaron Boone said post-game was, that can't happen. I sent Dylan a video today that somebody had put together on Twitter and TikTok that was Aaron Boone's new, it's all in front of us, is now just that can't happen. That can't happen. Well, you know what can't happen? The New York Yankees can't play this badly. That can't happen. I don't have confidence in Aaron Boone anymore, and I've tried so hard to believe in a guy that, I mean, gave the Yankees one of the biggest moments, but also he's not a guy that stands up for himself. And that's where this issue is. It's clear that he is getting direction from the front office. Everyone says it. It is clear that Brian Cashman and the analytics department, and as ESPN New York keeps calling them, the nerds up top, are controlling these decisions. And at some point, the spreadsheets can't make the decision. I was thinking about it earlier as I took my dog on a walk. We have a good friend, as we get towards football season, we have a good friend that brings a spreadsheet to our fantasy football drafts, our good friend Dom, right? And last year, I remember on almost all my picks, spreadsheet says that's a bad idea. Spreadsheet says that's a bad idea. And off the start, spreadsheet was right. I think I was 1-4 or 1-3 through the first 4 weeks, right? Well, guess what? I finished second. I went to the championship. I lost to the team who made the most trades. Shout out Josh. But I lost to only then. Spreadsheets don't account for injuries, morale. They don't account for really who's hot, who's not, right? Especially in baseball in a 162-game season. And unfortunately, Aaron Boone has not shown any desire to get away from the spreadsheets. And as Michael Kay and as everyone else I've heard has said, if the Yankees fire Aaron Boone, they're just going to bring someone in that they can do the exact same thing and feed. So honestly, Yankees can bring in anyone. I still won't have the confidence in them. So I'm going to 3.8 here on the confidence scale. It's not great.
What you said last right there is kind of what's ringing through to me. Even if they were to axe Boone, they're just going to hire someone else who's going to fit the mold. The kind of theory I gave you the other day is there's some people clamoring that if they get swept by the Rangers here, that, maybe this is the time. Maybe this is where you pull the plug on Booney, and maybe this is where his run as manager of the Yankees comes to an end. It's a good theory. Could make sense, especially with how they performed on the road this season and how they performed specifically as of late, because this is probably the worst stretch. I think almost unequivocally the worst stretch of Aaron Boone's tenure as manager of the New York Yankees. But then something else I was thinking about that I said to you. Say you put Brad Ausmus in there. Is anything going to change? Maybe it'll give them the jolt. Maybe sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need a change of energy. Sometimes you need something, a flip to, kind of be switch, something to kind of just reinvigorate a room. But is anything going to change from the top down? Maybe this is a team that uses that to revitalize themselves and get into the postseason, because they're clearly not playing for Booney right now. They don't feel like he's threatened. They don't feel like his job is threatened. And if it is, then they clearly don't care. So my then point is, say they scrape themselves into the playoffs. They scrape themselves off the floor. They get in. Is Ausmus going to change anything? Is he just going to be the, again, kind of puppet of the front office and do this again? And we're going to be in the same song and dance a couple years from now just because he got them into a postseason. So for me, it's not a vote of confidence in Aaron Boone. It's a vote of confidence in the front office. But the question I framed to you, I'm still going to answer. My confidence level in Aaron Boone is also not high, because I really like Aaron Boone. And we talked about this the other day. He's a likable guy. There's a reason he was an outstanding media personality before he was a manager. There's a reason he's a relatively liked player across all of Major League Baseball and is revered in terms of his personality and just being a good locker room guy. Hell, it's part of the reason he got the job. And he was a change of pace from Joe Girardi. Joe Girardi was that old school manager type, take no shit, get the job done. Boone is a little bit more of a let the team lead itself, have some fun, be a little bit more easygoing. He's not the guy who's going to scream at you in the dugout. More often than not, he's the guy who's going to scream at the umpire because he's going to fight for his guys. And I respect the hell out of that. And I really like
Aaron Boone. That lately.
But my point exactly, Aaron Boone feels like he's dejected right now. It feels like Booney needs a change of pace. And to me, it feels like Aaron Boone doesn't have that same fire right now that they need. It feels like they're going so much by the book. They're not going to ever make the change. You're right. And if they did, I'd be stunned. Maybe they go with a Yankee legend like a Paul O'Neill, who really fires things up and changes the ways and goes at the front office and goes by his own book and his own marching orders. There's a reason the Nick Sabans of the world do a lot better in the long run than the Lincoln Rileys of the world. It's because they can lead a locker room. That's not to say Lincoln Riley can't, but sometimes you can't be everybody's friend. Sometimes you need to bench even your best players because they had a bad day and they made a blunder. It happens. What Jazz did happen. What Austin Wells did happens. But you got to reprimand them for that. They can't just be out there the next day trotted into the lineup. And then how it looks to me when Ben Rice is benched outside of the pitching matchup, like I said, is that, okay, the kid spoke up. Let's show him where, the chain of command is, where the pecking order is. For me, it's still about the same margin as you because he did get them to the World Series, because I do like him, because he does fight tooth and nail for his guys. But right now, it just feels like something needs to change. And it feels like we kind of said this a couple years ago, and it feels like it's coming to fruition again. If anybody's going to be the scapegoat, if anybody's going to feel the fall guy, unfortunately, it's going to be Aaron Boone, because my panic meter is probably like a 3-1, a 3-2. But that doesn't mean I don't trust Aaron Boone. That doesn't mean I don't like Aaron Boone. It just feels like the front office is playing puppet master with Aaron Boone, and we're not even getting the true Aaron Boone that we would be getting if they didn't have their hands in everything.
And it's starting to become a problem, though, with Boone, too. Like, look at last night's game. Why are you throwing up the 4 for Wyatt Langford, who's got a 243 average? Let Jake Bird pitch to him, and sure, I'm not making excuses for Jake Bird throwing the sinker there instead of the sweeper and Josh Young just hitting that walk-off bomb. I'm not making excuses there, but why not pitch to Wyatt Langford, right? Langford's a great young guy. I think he's going to have a really good future, but he's struggling this year. It's a complete turnaround from where we think of Wyatt Langford the year before. He's batting 243, his on-base percentage over 320, but, I mean, like, a lot of that is his walk. So he may have gotten walked anyway, but he's been struggling at the plate, right? And you can go to so many of these little decisions lately as well. I mean, I said maybe we talk about Devin Williams, but part of my argument against Devin Williams, and Yankee fans are ripping him to shreds, and part of the reason I feel bad is the Yankees removed him from a role he struggled in. Then Luke Weaver gets hurt. They put him back in that role. He does well for a little bit, but then he starts struggling again. And rather than making a change, you're still throwing Devin Williams out there as the closer. It is clear he can't close in New York for whatever reason. He was good in the 8th inning, the 7th and 8th inning leading into Luke Weaver. And I'm not saying you have to put Weaver back there since he's been struggling lately, but you have so many guys now, so many options, and you're still using the one that you know shouldn't be in that role. And that was Williams last night, blowing that save. It is clear now 5 of his 7 games for Devin Williams, he has allowed runs since the All-Star break. He needs a change. And I feel like that's another problem that we see from Boone. Even if, right, the front office and the analytics say this or that, you can still swap someone out in the lineup card. Let's take, for example, Rice and Wells. Rice, this lefty-lefty matchup we keep talking about, Rice could have started instead of Wells. Wells was in there lefty-lefty last night, and Wells is a worse hitter right now than Ben Rice. And instead you go with Austin Wells, but let's also look at the fact that Ben Rice is one of the few players who have come out and said something like, we need a lot of urgency right now, right? It's not concern, but we need a sense of urgency. And I think part of the reason he's the only one is because Aaron Judge has been down rehabbing and away from the team for a little bit, not doing media, but he was back in the dugout last night. He's back in the lineup tonight. He's got to be the guy. He's got to be a captain for once, right? I love Aaron Judge. You do as well. Every Yankee fan does. But I need to see this guy be a captain. Stand up. Shut the door behind Aaron Boone. Have a players-only meeting like it was rumored they had one. Turned out they didn't. Have one where you take all the coaches out. I need to see accountability from the Yankee players too, because I think part of this is falling on Aaron Boone. Shouldn't be. Last night, Jazz Chisholm threw a ball to second base for a double play that nearly got past Anthony Volpe. Max Fried had a horrible pickoff move with the bases loaded. Why are you picking off at second base with the bases loaded, right? This isn't all on Aaron Boone, and I think that's part of it. A lot of Yankee fans look that way, and we've looked that way too, but there's so much more than just Aaron Boone right now, and it's unfortunate that he will be the fall guy. And it feels like Brian Cashman's comments last week after the trade deadline, they've set up for Aaron Boone to be the fall guy at the end of the year. We gave our manager so many options. We gave our manager so much more depth, right? And now it feels like if they don't get to the World Series, if they don't win the World Series, he could be gone. And whether they do or do not make the World Series, I'm not defending Aaron Boone. I think he has been bad too. But there is so much more bad for the New York Yankees right now than just Aaron Boone. And I take it, I brought up the Yankees, assistant coaches before, because last night I'm watching, the game on Yes Network, and they talk about the Texas Rangers who'd fired their hitting coach. Offensive coordinator is actually the title the Rangers use, and they hired Aaron Boone's brother, Brett Boone, back on May 5th. And I went through and I tried to look at the stats, and honestly, most of them stay the same. But the big difference right now is that Brett Boone has the Rangers producing runs. They made one change, and the Rangers became a playoff team again, right? What if the Yankees were to get rid of Luis Rojas at third base? That's the first, little piece to fall. Rojas is gone, so let's get, the players start playing better. That little spark you might need. Oh, crap, one of our coaches is gone. That's more on just the coaches. That's on us, too. Let's start playing better before Travis Chapman's gone, before Aaron Boone's gone, Brad Ausmus is gone, right? Do something to make something change. And I don't think Matt Blake's the right answer here because of what he's done in the past. I think the Yankees have run into bad luck. But there's guys that are expendable on the coaching staff, right? Not Mike Harkey in the bullpen who's been there forever. But if you're not going to make a change to Aaron Boone, and I don't think the Yankees will ever make a change in the regular season, even if they were to get swept against Texas and then swept against the Astros this weekend, they're not going to make a change midseason. But you can change other coaches and feel just as good. And I think that might be where the Yankees should start looking. I think our confidence in Boone is low, but I think there's so much more that goes into our confidence in Boone than just Boone himself. Yeah, he's made bad decisions. He's made bad decisions his entire career, but he's also the 8th winningest manager in New York Yankee history right now, right? And I get it. He's had Aaron Judge in the prime of his career, but Judge can't do it all alone.
And Aaron Judge has been hurt in that time. Aaron Judge has had down stretches in that time. Yes, he has been special. Yes, he is an anomaly. And yes, he is one of the best baseball players of this generation. But Think about that season, 82-80, how much they had to overcome. And honestly, Boone didn't have a bad season as a manager in that run. Yes, you look at what they did last year, and you mentioned it before. There's decisions that Boone made that are utterly mind-boggling that came back to cost the Yankees a World
But did he
Series.
make the question becomes, did he
Exactly.
actually make them? Or
And
did
you
he
teed it
just
up
not
like
have the did he just not have the I guess balls would be the word for it. Did he not have the balls to go against the front office?
you teed it up though right there, because that's the biggest thing. It's kind of a loaded conversation when you talk about Boone and his decisions, his bullpen decisions, his lineup decisions, the things that you want to chastise him for. You don't know if it's coming from him or if Brian Cashman's sitting in his office saying, well, I did everything I could, I gave you the pieces, but hey, by the way, as now that I gave you the chess pieces to play with, can you use your king there? No, I would have used my queen there. Never mind, I'm going to move on from you. Like, it just feels like you're managing from a office suite instead of letting the guy who played the damn game do his job. And so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe he is the guy calling the shots. And you know what? Some new guy's going to come in there and change everything up. But it doesn't feel like that's the case. And what you said, I think, is the perfect fix to this whole thing. Unfortunately, you never want to call for a guy's job. You never want to see that happen. But what the Yankees might need is to see a head chopped off. And I know that is a terrible analogy, but somebody might have to go for the Yankees, the players, the coaches, everybody to realize, oh, wow, this is legit. There really is a fire that needs to be lit under our ass, or else we could be the next ones out of here. And that might have happened with Jake Bird going down to AAA. That might have been the first, like, oh, wow, they just gave up a top 10 prospect, and now they're shipping him to Scranton Wilkes-Barre. The leash is not as long as we thought it was. And it might be a Luis Rojas or a Travis Chapman going and then going, oh, wow, okay, the leash isn't as long as we thought it was. Because these guys have been getting away with anything they want for so long that it feels like something's got to go for them to realize that they're not inevitable, that they're not immune to being punished. And so if it's Rojas, if it was Bird, whatever it needs to be, something's got to click with these players too, just as much as Boone clicking in his own head that they're expendable. And so as it currently stands, the Yankees did make a lot of moves at the deadline that we broke down in depth on Thursday and a little bit on Tuesday as well. Jake Bird mentioned it right off there. He was optioned to AAA Scranton Wilkes-Barre in a move that is shocking because, as I just said, you gave up a top 10 prospect, a guy that we're both pretty high on holistically in Rock Riggio, but didn't have a place with this team as it looks in the long term. So he got traded, but a top prospect nonetheless in the organization for Bird, a guy who, of the three relievers in Duvall, Bednar, and then, of course, Bird, he was the third guy. He was the third guy I just said right there. He was the third guy because he had a 4.75 ERA at the time of his acquisition. That has blossomed, and ultimately he's now in Scranton Wilkes-Barre. As a whole, Bednar, Duvall, Bird, they've combined for allowing 9 earned runs in 6 innings, 10 hits, 12 runs as a whole, 8 strikeouts, 3 walks. Maybe it's where they're being placed. Maybe it's how they're being utilized. We just talked about Boone. Regardless of when you're put in, you got to get the job done. And it feels like the early sample size for the three of them, again, 6 innings between 3 guys, hasn't been great. The last 2 guys there on that list, Duvall, Bednar, I've got confidence they can get it back on track. Bird, for a change, the Yankees kind of made the move we've been waiting for them to make with a lot of other players. Sometimes sending you down to Scranton Wilkes-Barre shouldn't be a punishment. Listen, I lived in Scranton. It's a nice place. There's a lot to like there. Hell, if you're Clint Frazier, you're a Scranton Rail Rider for life, as his bio says. I'm waiting for that podcast, by the way, Clint. It better be electric. But sometimes Scranton Wilkes-Barre is not a punishment. Sometimes it's not quadruple A purgatory. Sometimes it's just to get your head on straight. And for a guy in Jake Bird who just came from, even though the records are equivalent right now in the last 46 games, the worst team in baseball in Colorado, to a team that has a World Series or bust mentality, sometimes you just got to get your head screwed back on straight. So Bird sent to Scranton Wilkes-Barre, Duvall, Bednar, and Bird as the whole have been struggling.
I mean, you look at Jake Bird, and he was a guy that in his last 17 appearances prior to the trade had a 13.20 ERA in 15 innings. He had allowed 22 earned runs. Now, after his first 2 appearances with the Yankees, he's got a 14.82 ERA in his last 19 appearances, which spans now 17 innings. Maybe what the Yankees should have done was eased him in the 5th or 6th innings of ball games. And I think he did come into Friday early again. we were not watching that game, but maybe the high leverage innings weren't great. Maybe going last night with the game on the line in the 10th inning with a runner starting on second base, not great for a guy who's been struggling, right? I think what you said is right, though. The Yankees just made a move that shows a couple things. One, they're not afraid to cut their losses, right? And now you have 3.5 more years of Jake Bird. The Yankees are not letting this guy go for free. They just gave up Rock Riggio and Ben Shields. They're not giving this guy up for free. But they're not afraid to send him down. Try to get his head straight up there. How many pitchers have we seen just a little bit of time off? I wouldn't be surprised if Ian Hamilton comes back up from AAA and can pitch for the New York Yankees again, right? These are guys that just sometimes need a change of pace. You look at Doval and Bednar as well, right? And now I'm realizing I spelt his name wrong on the ticker, so maybe I'll get that away for now as I fix it. But
I got it.
so,
Don't
thank
worry.
you, thank you. Maybe their first impressions weren't good, but their second impressions were better, right? Doval and Bednar in their second appearances with the Yankees, a lot better. And Miami on Friday night was just an anomaly in itself. Everything that could have went wrong. Jose Caballero making that, error in right field when he's got 5 defensive runs saved there, even though he's an infielder. It's stupid stuff, but it's also the stuff that's happening to the Yankees right now. And Jake Bird, getting optioned here and struggling is kind of the epitome of the Yankees season right now. Even when it seems like something good comes, which is all these guys at the deadline, or a mini win streak, 2 or 3 games, or, Aaron Judge goes on a tear, whatever the case is, something hits them right away. That's what it feels like with this Jake Bird, getting optioned off the bat, and what it felt like Friday night. It felt like, just that when it rains, it pours. That's it. Everything's compounding. Everything's getting worse right now. And Jake Bird getting optioned, one, I hope he's back up sooner rather than later. You still got 3.5 years of him. And to everyone on Yankees Twitter trying to judge this trade already, stop. Because Rock Riggio isn't in the MLB right now. Ben Shields isn't in the MLB right now. Who knows if they pan out? We hope for good things for them. And who knows what Jake Bird's future with the Yankees look like? Maybe he becomes, a really good, pitcher for the Yankees for years to come. A Jonathan Loaiziga, whatever. I can name so many names. But yeah, it hasn't been great since this deadline. And I mean, we've only focused on the pitchers. We had over the hitters. Austin Slater gets an RBI on a fielder's choice yesterday. He pulls his hamstring or sprains it on his way to first base. He instantly calls. Now, I think the one interesting move for me last night from Aaron Boone, going back quickly, is instead of Trent Grisham, he did go Jason Dominguez. He did try to get Dominguez in against the lefty to try to get him hitting from the right side. Dominguez did not hit from the right side. He made some good contact, I will say that. But Austin Slater goes on the 10-day IL, and you look at the stats also going across. Caballero, McMahon, Rosario, Slater, they've combined for 255 average, 7 runs batted in. Take away Caballero and Slater, McMahon and Rosario have all 12 of those hits so far. 12 for 37 are those two. It's been up and down, right? It's been those ebbs and flows for the 2 guys hitting that came over. The 2 guys aren't hitting. For Doval and Bednar's, next appearances, their second appearances in pinstripes, they do good. Bird doesn't. They just can't find anything consistent right now. And it just feels like, you know what? Hopefully it all works out. Hopefully all these trades come out. There's another trade I almost put on here, but I just wanted to stick with the deadline. Obviously, the Devin Williams trade, right? We could talk about that one. Could talk about how I did the stats in my boredom today as I'm still sitting here on my vacation. But Devin Williams, and I mentioned it earlier about, he was in the closer role. They demote him. After he was demoted from that closer role, in those middle, 29 appearances, I believe it is, he was so much better. 29 appearances, 27 and a third, a 2.63 ERA, right? His first 10 games, he had a 11.25 ERA, and his last 7 since the All-Star break, he's got a 7.71. If we're talking here about Boone, when do we keep Cashman accountable for all these trades not hitting? And I know it's early to say that these trades at the deadline aren't hitting, but I mean, you already optioned one of them. It's the same thing they did with who came over last year. Aniel De Los Santos from Chicago. He pitched 5 times for New York and was DFA'd.
It is another conversation about some of the moves he's made, because as much as I said, you give him the chess pieces and then let him play, but then have his hands the whole time like he's a toddler. You also can't get the pieces and have one of the queens be broken in half and a little bit faulty and whatever it may be. And it does feel like at times that's been the move. Now I do have faith in a lot of these guys on that ticker below. I think Jake Bird, like I said, is a guy who clean shaven, new guy, just needs to get his head back on straight. Duvall's a flamethrower. I'm all in on him. I'm all in on Bednar. I think they're going to do great. Slater, he's hurt. That's going to be some time away from the team. But Caballero, I think a lot of Yankees fans already put him on their shit list after the other night. That's far from true. The guy's speedy. The guy's athletic. He's a do-it-all weapon. And like I said the other night when we were talking about the fit for Caballero, when you look at this team down the road, there's your fit already. Slater's hurt. And that might unfortunately continue to happen as we get into these summer months, winding down into October or into late September, October. There's going to always be a role for a guy like Caballero beyond just his base stealing abilities. It's going to be if a guy goes down, he's a freak athlete, a Swiss Army knife who can play all over. McMahon's been a jolt of energy. Rosario, we're maybe going to finally start to see in a lineup and at least getting some semblance of playing time. So there is still a lot to like about the guys that were brought in. Yes, you can question Cashman up and down the river and out the wazoo as long as we want. We can do that in the offseason if none of these moves end up inevitably panning out at the end of the season. But as it stands right now, as this team looks, some of these moves in the long term, especially with how controlled some of these guys are, just be patient, Yankees fans, because it's the one thing I'm still holding out hope on right now. It's that these guys might be okay. The kids might be all right. Now, I know some of these guys are in their 30s. They're not kids, but you get my point. They're the new faces in new places. Give them time to acclimate. I'll pose it to you out there, Yankees lands. Did you ever get dropped into a new environment and have to immediately perform at your highest potential? It's hard. It's challenging. A lot of these guys, their entire lives were just uprooted completely. Now, some of them, like Bednar, Duvall, Bird, they might be ecstatic. Some of these guys, though, it's still a massive change. Even if you're coming from Pittsburgh to New York, Colorado to New York, San Francisco to New York, whatever it may be, other dugout to dugout in Caballero's case, it's still a big change. Be patient, Yankees fans. At least on the trade deadline front, have some patience with these guys. Now, I'll take stuff off the ticker for a second here because there's a bigger conversation to be had. You had one more thing up here before we got into our regular kind of rhyme or reason to round out the show. And there is something that I think is worth talking about here. And this is where I thought originally we were going to go with Pinstripe Panic Meter, but this is where I want to go with Devin Williams because this feels like where the conversation needs to be for him. Are you going to hold him accountable for the fact that holistically this season, Devin Williams has not been a quarter of what you expected? Or are you going to continue to trot him out there as a closer and account for the fact that at his best with Milwaukee, he was one of the best closers in Major League Baseball? I'll pose it to you first. You've kind of already tipped your hand and let your feelings be known on the matter, so you don't have to give the whole breakdown if you don't want to. We can kind of just go back and forth on Williams here. But for me, it's been simple, and it's been as simple as the conversation you and I had privately the other day. Getting Duvall, getting Bednar, eventually working Weaver back up to what Weaver can be. Because, again, I still think Weaver is not 100%. I still don't understand why he is the closer of this team right now when you added both those pieces in. If you want to give them time because they just got uprooted, I get it. But he continues to cost this team games. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Boone said prior to the game today that it was a possibility that, you see Devin Williams moved out of the closer role. I'd like to know why it's a possibility. The stats, again, you know what? Analytics, the spreadsheet can say whatever. It could say Devin Williams is the best damn closer in baseball. He hasn't pitched like it. His stuff isn't there. His clutchness isn't there, right? This goes back to Pete Alonso's home run in that series against the Mets in the postseason that ended the Brewers season last year, right? This is just, he's just not been good, right? And you've got to hold him accountable for a couple reasons. One, let's start with a stupid one. He went, and he's the reason the Yankees can grow facial hair now, right? They were ready to the point where, I think Brian Cashman's quote was, if we lose one player in free agency, it's one too many. Well, I can tell you, Devin Williams is gone in free agency. I think the Yankees have made that crystal clear that this guy does not have a future in pinstripes. They went out and got guys with, all this time, for, all the control years for a reason. And I think part of it is what Devin Williams has been. And I think part of it is, obviously there's other guys in the bullpen leaving. But let's face it, over his last 3 years with Milwaukee, 148 appearances, Dylan, 141 innings pitched, 26 earned runs total. 3 seasons, 148 appearances, 24 earned runs in 46 appearances with the Yankees. Hasn't gone an inning in all of them. He's gone 42 and a third with the Yankees. That's a 5.10 ERA this season. The honest truth is the guy is just not the same. And I think you've got to keep him accountable. I don't think it's his ability, because his ability has shined this season, right? I just talked about the numbers in that middle stretch when his ERA was down to a 2.60 in those, 29 appearances. I think it's just a matter of fact of the guy doesn't want to be here. And I feel like we don't know that. He hasn't said that, but his actions kind of show it, right? And the Yankees, it almost feels like they're ready to ship him off too in the offseason. And we kind of heard that maybe they were going to shop him for some prospects at the deadline, right? I think, he doesn't want to be here, as it seems, at least from the outsider perspective. He's not going to be here. So he's just doing what he does, right? He's just throwing these pitches. He doesn't care, I don't think, necessarily as much as he should about the wins or losses right now. And I think that's the problem. And you saw him crack that same grin that Aroldis Chapman, did after that Jose Altuve home run. And it's not, sometimes it's like just God, you can't even make this up anymore. I'm doing everything I can, and they're hitting home runs. It was Jock Peterson and how bad he's been this year. That just hit him for a home run. But it's uncompetitive pitches. It's uncompetitive pitching. I think you've got to keep him accountable. And I think where that starts is Aaron Boone should have come out. And I know he doesn't want to slam players in the media. And I think a lot of Yankee fans have taken that out of context too. Any good manager or coach doesn't really slam their players in the media. Remember what happened in Washington earlier this year. Davey Martinez goes and says, it's not the coaches. We show up every day. We're the players, right? We're here earlier than the players. He lost the locker room right there. And then he was fired, right? Aaron Boone's a good manager. He's not going to go and straight up say Devin Williams sucks. He's out of the closer role. But I think you could say we're going to experiment with Doval, and we're going to experiment with David Bednar, and we're going to experiment again with Luke Weaver, right? And I think that changes things, because there you're keeping him accountable. And I think the Yankees need that. I think if you want Devin Williams to be Devin Williams and help you down the stretch, you got to keep it real with him. And this should matter a lot more for him too, because I think the Yankees should be real with him if they haven't already and said, you're not coming back. He's pitching for a contract next year too. And he's pitching for a pretty damn bad one at this point.
In his last 7 games, Williams has a 7.71 ERA. Since July, a 6 flat ERA. And when you look back at some of these games this season, he blew an 8-4 lead in the 9th against Tampa, blew a 2-1 lead in the 9th against Toronto, blew a 3-0 lead in the 8th versus San Diego when he was relegated back to that role, blew a 9-9 game that the Yankees kind of did everything to fight back in against Toronto, blew a 2-1 lead in the 9th against Tampa, and then blew a 5-4 lead in the 9th last night against Texas. He smirked, as you mentioned there. The Yankees announcers teed it up almost perfectly, like they knew Jock was going to hit the home run, by just kind of saying, like, the guy doesn't look like himself, both physically, at the dish this season, whatever he may be, a fall from grace. And he shut them up pretty darn quickly. I mean, it was pretty much the biggest announcer's jinx you could get. And then to look and smirk. And like you said, it could have just been a my luck at this point kind of thing. Or it could have been that same stupid grin Chapman flash where it was just like, I don't know what you want me to say. Like, I did my best, kind of thing. Like, it is very clear that Devin Williams, this isn't a fit. There was a reason he was being shopped, and I just gave you 6 games. The Yankees take those 6 games, drop them off the loss record. They're the top team in the American League East. And how many of those games did I just rattle off that were against American League teams on the ticker that you're going to see momentarily, that we've put up every week? They have fallen from the top of that to the bottom of that to barely clinging onto a wild card slot. And one of the biggest reasons is because of the airbender, the guy who was supposed to be the guy to lock down the pen. And I'll add this, you didn't really need him. I'm sorry, you didn't really need him. You could have gone out at the deadline and did something like this. You could have gone out and traded for one of these guys in the offseason then, and it probably would have cost you less than what you gave up for Williams. And look at how Caleb Durbin's doing. Side note, my point here is simple. You had a closer. You had Luke Weaver. And you went out and had to be the Yankees, had to solidify it, had to just go up one notch, because I'll give them credit. That's what they've tried to do with the bullpen. When you had Zach Britton, Andrew Miller, and Aroldis Chapman, you had a murderer's row. They've always had good bullpens. But that just felt like being gluttonous. That just felt like being greedy. And it has not worked at all. You change your rule for the guy. You have given him every tangible opportunity to succeed in the closer role, and he continues to burn you. I hope Devin Williams finds a home. I hope he goes back to what he once was, but he's not that right now, and he should not be closing baseball games for the Yankees anymore, because clearly it's rocking his confidence at this point. It's got to end. I mean, I don't know how long the Devin Williams experiment's going to go, but you want to talk about somebody who might have to get shipped down to Scranton Wilkes-Barre if it continues to go? It might continue to go like that. He's still capable of being a good pitcher. He's still got a damn good arsenal. When you look at the analytics, he hasn't actually been performing that bad. But when you look at the ERA, the blown games, the things that actually matter in baseball games, he's not been as promised. It wasn't a move that ever made sense to me back then. It was not a move that made sense to me in April or May. He started to get it back on track. And then Devin Williams just has clearly proven at this point that he does not fit as a New York Yankee.
And he's definitely not fit as a closer for the New York Yankees.
No.
Pitch him in the sixth when the pitcher comes out. Since nobody can get length right now, we don't even have time in this show to discuss how bad Max Fried has been as of late, right? And you know, pitch him in the sixth inning, the seventh inning, in a 2-3 run ball game. Pitch him in a 1-run ball game in the seventh, a 3-run ball game in the eighth, or a 4-run ball game in the ninth. But don't be putting him in these save opportunities. And don't be putting him in situations in extra innings that we've seen burn him a couple times this year. It's clear that he's not going to be a Yankee, and it's clear that he can't hit this role. Now, Dylan, we're going to do this quick. I texted you in the private chat quickly. I have an idea with this. This goes beyond just Devin Williams. There's a couple other players where this accountability or count for ability stand true with, and we've seen it. So I just kind of want to rapid fire a few of them, right? How about Jazz Chisholm? Let's start there, because he's the one that's made an error most recently. Jazz has a ton of talent. He's been a superstar since coming to New York, right? But he's been struggling as of late. He's batting .222 in his last 7 games. He's batting .250 over his last 15. He's in an extended struggle at the plate at the moment. He makes that base running error over the weekend. Bench him for a game, right? Do you account for the fact that he's a spark plug back at home in Miami, where, he kind of hated and looking for revenge for some time? Or if you were the Yankees, do you keep him accountable for those mistakes he made over the weekend?
I said it earlier. You bench him. It does not matter who it is. And I'm sorry, but it has to be that. Him, you account for ability. Holistically, he's earned the right to be accounted for ability, unlike Devin Williams. As a Yankee, you put what he's done as a Yankee up there amongst the best trade deadline acquisitions Cashman's had on his resume. But it does not matter who you are. It's the same Nick Saban mantra. Yep. Whether you're the quarterback, star receiver, or whether you're the third guy off the bench, it does not matter. You make a mistake that is a boneheaded mistake, as Jazz did in that game, you get benched. It should just be the rule, just be the rhyme or reason.
If Aaron Judge makes that mistake, he should be benched too.
Yes, it's not just Jazz. It's
not just Jazz. It's any player. And I know they'll never do it with Judge. I also don't know if Judge would make that mistake, but Judge has made mistakes on the base paths this year. Next player, I agree with you. I think Jazz should have been benched for at least a game, and we had talked about that. Next player, let's go to Austin Wells. He makes that mistake. First of all, he took accountability. He said straight up, I was being an idiot. He didn't know what was going on. He said he was being an idiot. That's the first time we've heard a Yankee player. Jazz came out and said, I'd do it again. Mind you, Austin Wells said, I was being an idiot. He gets benched, whether that be because it was a day game after a night game, or whether that be because it was punishment. He was benched the next day. But let's take this into a different light, because that issue's passed. Austin Wells has been awful at the plate this year. He's batting .125 in his last 7, .132 in his last 15, .188 in his last 30. He is a guy that thought of to have a lot of ability. He's got a bunch of defensive ability, but at some point Don't you have to keep him accountable for dribbling into a double play yesterday in a situation where the Yankees could have had some more runs on the board against Texas? Don't you have to keep him accountable for the fact that, he's just been bad, right? We love the guy, but you should probably keep him accountable too. And it's different because it's a struggle, not a boneheaded mistake here. Do you think he deserves a couple days on the bench to allow Ben Rice to get hot? Because Ben Rice is starting to heat up.
Yes and no. I think you also got to count for the fact that Wells is a true 100% bred in the Yankees organization catcher. Ben Rice has been thrown all over. Ben Rice has been obviously now the backup catcher with JC now down in AAA, but Wells should still get the lion's share of the reps behind the plate. He's still a darn good defensive catcher, and he's still been the guy I think a lot of these guys want calling their games. And so for me, that is where, yes, you keep leaving him out there. You keep trotting him out there because if he is that guy that they trust, you don't want to mess with a good thing, especially with a bullpen and a starting rotation that has a over 5 ERA each of them and over 6 for the bullpen. So for me, that's actually where I'll go push against you. I'll take the 220 average, the, sub that at this point, the struggles from Austin Wells in exchange for the fact that if he's the guy that makes them feel most comfortable calling their games, that is paramount to me. But at the same time, that boneheaded move, he also 2 games, give him 2 games rest. Let them get comfortable with Rice because the reality also is they need to have some familiarity with him because what happens if Austin Wells gets hurt? He had a circulatory issue earlier this season with himself. What if that happens again? You need to be prepared and build that same rapport that JC was able to build with these guys in the spring that Ben Rice hasn't necessarily been able to get that same rapport with in an extended sample size. So for me, yes, you account for his ability in that regard, but with the caveat that you still need to give Ben Rice some run to be able to make sure that he's as comfortable as possible, especially if you get into October and he's the guy, if they hopefully get there at this point, that gets thrust into that role.
Yeah, I think he's just a guy that needs some time, not because, he's made that boneheaded mistake last week or whatnot, but just because his issues, I keep mentioning the word compounding, and that's another guy that everything just seems to be moving against right now. And it's been tough, but the Yankees have put Ben Rice in situations to play, right? And the other day they had the option to pinch hit for either Ben Rice or Austin Wells. Both were coming up in the same inning. They pinch hit Ben Rice with Paul Goldschmidt, right? And then Miami went to the bullpen and got a righty, which you knew that move was coming either way. So why don't you keep one of them, or why don't you, pinch hit Rice there instead? Especially, I think that was the first game when, everything seemingly went away from the Yankees. But my last guy here, because I want to wrap this up, Anthony Volpe, right? Guy's gotten hot at the plate, but guy has been a liability defensively. And we've talked enough about him this year. This is one of those, situations where I think there's an added layer, and we've talked about it. We both think that Anthony Volpe has a lingering issue, right? Meredith asked Aaron Boone the other day why his shoulder was being iced, and Aaron Boone said, no, he's fine. I don't fully believe that. I believe something will come out in the offseason. Besides the point, can't speculate. We can only just talk about what we know about. Still mixed up on the last guy. Anthony Volpe's been struggling defensively, but his offense has gotten hot. Where do you balance this out?
16 errors already on the season for Volpe. Still have over 50 games left, or just under now 50 games left on the season, which is crazy to think about. Just a smidge under that. And to me, I think it's simple as this. If he continues to make boneheaded plays in the field, that's part of the reason you've kept him out there, because he's been so reliable with his glove. 16 errors right now is one away from tying his career high. Yes, that's a 3-season sample size, but this is a guy who was a Gold Glover. He has a 95.9% fielding percentage this season. He had a 97.2 a year ago, 97 in his rookie season when he was just about the same age as you and I. And now he's gotten that major league run, and it feels like it's getting worse. And you know what? He has been thrust with different guys at second base and third base this season, and felt like, it was one thing that was underrated about McMahon, that getting somebody over there who's a little bit more reliable at the hot corner can help Volpe, can help him massively. But when you talk about what he's done at the dish too, it felt like they needed to give him the break a while ago. But now it feels like we're moving past it because he's finally getting hot. But knowing the Yankees now is when he'll probably ride the bench for a game or two or three, and then he'll cool down, and that'll be just completely stymied. But for me, I think he's a tough one because if he cools down again, give him that break. If he continues to make fundamental errors in the field, give him a longer break. You have the depth to do it now. You're not trotting out Jorbit Vivas, Oswald Peraza, because that could have been your case if you were Aaron Boone. That these guys are batting below 200. Hell, they were batting below 150. Why am I going to throw them out there when we got a guy who's relatively reliable defensively, hasn't been this season, but is better with his bat even in his worst days than that? Now, you've got the depth to handle that. So if he's struggling, give him time off. Give him time to get his head back on straight, because whether you like it or not, Yankees fans, he's 24 years old. He's still not even reached the prime of what this kid can be as a New York Yankee. So as it stands, treat him like one of your best investments. Maybe treat him with kid gloves the same way you treat him Dominguez with kid gloves defensively, because that's how it is with Volpe at this point. So for you're getting a gray answer there. You got one clear, one not, and one, whatever.
I'm kind of in the same boat. If he starts struggling offensively, and I think it's a 290 average right now over his last 296 average over his last 7, right? And 241 over his last 15, which you probably think isn't great, but compared to what he's done this season, it's really good, right? If he keeps hitting the way he's hitting, you can hopefully make up for those errors. But right now he's making errors in crucial situations. And if he were to lose his bat here in the next couple days, weeks, then I want to see Jose Caballero get a couple starts at shortstop. And even if it's I know Ahmed Rosario, they said wasn't good defensively at shortstop, but even for a couple games, you give Caballero one game and you give Rosario the next, and then Volpe's back, keep him accountable a little bit. I like what you said about the kid gloves, right? With Dominguez. And I think Dominguez has gotten better, but he's still struggling. I know Aaron Boone talked about that on Talking Yanks today, but treat him with those a little bit. If he's struggling, I don't care that it's year 3 and you haven't given him days off, right? I think his only day off this year was when he ate those bad wings, if I'm not mistaken. That was him, right? No, that was Belly.
That was Belly.
Never mind. That was Belly. But
I was going to say we might have to take one for the team and go cook some bad wings and send him to Volpe to give him some much needed time off.
But I agree. If he starts to struggle offensively again, you got to play that game with him. Keep him a little bit accountable while also accounting for the fact that he's a former Gold Glover. And I mean, his bat was good in the minors, right? Just hasn't translated yet to the majors. So I'm glad we extended that past Devin Williams. I'll give you the reins back.
I mean, we can rewind this down here. I mean, we've already gone over an hour. We did 2 episodes last week. I think you and I are both fried when it comes to
late
right now. It's late. I haven't even eaten dinner. I haven't showered yet from the gym. It has been a long day for both of us. It has been a long couple days in Yankee land. We feel you, Yankees fans. You can look at the ticker for yourselves. Something's got to shift. Something's got to change one way or another, or a shoe might have to drop, because that's where things stand for the Yankees. They're a half a game back, clinging onto their wild card spot at the time of this recording, and they are starting to lose their ground completely in the American League East, now in 3rd place in the American League East. Reminder to follow us on Instagram and Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. We don't care right now. I don't think you do, but find us there, Bomber Boys Pod. Subscribe to our YouTube, Bomber Boys Podcast. Follow us on Spotify, Bomber Boys Podcast. Justin, what do you got going on this weekend or week? I don't know.
I got nothing is the simple way, but I get to watch Aaron Judge play baseball again. And that's going to be, that should be.
We didn't even talk about that because everything else is in disarray.
I wanted to make sure to mention that. That's why I said it. Aaron Judge, in 190 games as a designated hitter in his career, 302 average, 436 on base percentage, 608 slugging, 57 homers, and 144 RBI. I know he's not going to play every day at DH because of Stanton and the fact that you got to at least let Judge's arm recover a little bit. But I think Aaron Judge, I'm going to put it down there, right? Right now. The game already started. I think he got out in his first at-bat. But it's Tuesday, August 5th, 8:34 p.m. Eastern time. I think Aaron Judge, over this next stretch of games where he has to be DH, starts going on a tear. I don't think we've seen that tear that Aaron Judge usually goes on at some point, right? He was really good at the start. Then he cooled down a little bit. He's going to go on a tear, starting with his games at DH, and I think he cements himself as the AL MVP. And I'm hoping with that, he turns around the Yankees' fortune starting this weekend, which you already asked. I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to keep watching this team because as bad as it gets, I'm a New York Yankee fan through and through.
Oh, Captain, my Captain, be the guy to turn this ship around. Please, please, please. I got Bagel Fest this weekend, which you heard
That's
about
right.
this
That's
weekend.
right.
Bagel Fest, celebration of the Monticello,
Bagels.
state capital of New York, apparently, when it comes to
They had
bagels.
some good bagels that I tried.
Very, very good bagels, and they have a whole festival about it here. We think it's the 12th year. I don't have that confirmed, but I'm going to be a part of it with Bold Gold, introducing some acts and helping out this weekend. And yeah, I guess if you're in Sullivan County in the Hudson Valley, if you find yourselves here, come get a bagel. Stop over to Bagel Fest. Justin said it. You got the Justin stamp of approval. He's a foodie. He loves it.
Whoa.
You give ratings all the time on your Twitter.
I do ratings all the time.
You do? All right. It's late,
You're
folks.
done.
For Justin Chevela, I'm Dylan Price. Wherever you are, wherever you may be, thank you for hanging with us. Yankees fans, hold the faith. It's going to get better soon. At least we hope. Otherwise, if it doesn't, come hang with us again next Tuesday because you've got two guys who are ready to let it all out and have some Yankees therapy with you. But until then, until we see you again, thank you for hanging with us here on Bomber Boys.